saying, "Are you kidding? You are so lucky. You have a well, you have a pump, you have arms."
She had a well, pump, arms, and a heart bigger than the mountains she once called home. Today, we take you deep into the untamed heart of Montana, where survival wasn't just a necessity, it was a way of life. This is the story of Nancy Oar, an artist, a wife, a mountain woman, and above all, a warrior of spirit and soul. From the brutal winters of Yak Valley to the quiet sunrises of Florida, this is not just a survival story, it's a love story. It's a tale of passion, art, grit, heartbreak, and choosing family over fame. Stay with us, because this is one you'll never forget. Long before there were cameras, cabins, or fans sending letters of admiration, there was just Tom and Nancy, or two souls drawn together by fate and forever bound by the wilderness. Tom Oar wasn't your average cowboy. He was a legend on the rodeo circuit in the 60s and 70s, risking it all atop bucking broncs and wild mustangs. A thrill seeker with dirt on his boots and fire in his veins. But even the toughest riders fall, and Tom knew that the rodeo couldn't last forever. And then there was Nancy, born March 15, 1980, in Springfield, Illinois. Nancy's journey was different but just as daring. She wasn't chasing rodeo dreams. She was chasing colors, textures, and emotions through her art. A fine arts graduate from the University of Illinois, Nancy carved out her path with a paintbrush, not a saddle. When Tom and Nancy crossed paths, it was magnetic. Two opposites with the same soul. They fell in love, started a life together, and before long, chose something most people only dream of: the freedom to live completely off the grid. They didn't just visit the wild, they became it. They packed their things and disappeared into Montana's Yak Valley. No running water, no electricity, no phones, just a cabin, the forest, and the need to survive. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't trendy. It was pure, hard, bone-deep living, and they loved it. For over 3 decades, Nancy and Tom shaped their world with their bare hands, not out of necessity, but out of deep conviction. In a world rushing toward modern convenience, they ran in the opposite direction. Together, they built their homestead log by log, cutting timber from the surrounding forest, dragging it through snow and brush using nothing more than hand tools, ropes, and raw determination. Every beam in their cabin had a story, a bruise, a blister, a moment where giving up would have been easier, but never an option. They didn't just live in nature, they lived with it. Nancy learned to tan animal hides using ancient Native American methods passed down through oral tradition and hard-won experience. She soaked deer skins in wood ash, scraped them smooth with carved bone, tools, and softened them with smoke and bear fat. Each hide became a jacket, a pair of moccasins, or a blanket warm, durable, and entirely handmade. While most people brew their coffee with a touch of impatience, Nancy and Tom brewed pine needle tea, high in vitamin C and full of the wild, sharp scent of the forest. They cooked it over open flames while wolves howled in the distance, a sound that sent shivers down most people's spines, but gave them a strange sense of comfort. Out here, predators weren't enemies, they were neighbors. There were no buzzing phones, no scrolling through social media, no takeout menus. Their meals came from the land, fish caught in frozen rivers, berries foraged at dawn, and vegetables grown in frost-hardened soil. Winters were brutal. Storms could last for days. Sometimes they were snowed in for weeks at a time, forced to ration supplies and depend on each other for warmth and survival. But they called it freedom. Instead of the chaos of modern life, they had something else: peace. The kind of peace you don't buy or stream or post about. The kind of peace you earn by chopping firewood in a blizzard or silently tracking a wild animal for miles, heart pounding with purpose. They weren't escaping the world. They were building their own, one breath of cold mountain air at a time. Tom built log cabins with hand tools. Nancy sewed buckskin gloves, tended the garden, and kept their life stitched together with quiet strength. Their life was something out of another century, a rugged return to the 1800s in a world that seemed to spin faster, louder, and more digital with each passing day. While others scrolled endlessly through their phones, Tom and Nancy Oar rose with the sun and greeted it with purpose. Every day brought a new test, repairing traps battered by the cold, mending weather-worn leather gear, splitting wood for the stove, or preparing for yet another unpredictable Montana snowstorm. Their life was seasonal, primal, and intimate, not just with each other, but with the earth itself. They weren't hiding from the world. They just didn't need it. For over 3 decades, they lived without the hum of power lines or the glow of television screens. Their joy came not from likes and views, but from the crackle of a fire, the sound of elk bugling in the distance, and the quiet pride of finishing a day's work with their own 2 hands. They lived simply, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Then, in 2012, everything changed. The producers of Mountain Men, a History Channel reality series, were on a mission to find something increasingly rare in television: authenticity. They didn't want pretense or polished performances. They didn't want actors. They wanted real people living real lives, people who still knew how to survive without a supermarket or smartphone. They searched deep into the wilderness and found exactly what they were looking for: Tom and Nancy Oar. At first, the couple was hesitant. Fame was the last thing on their minds. They had spent decades avoiding the spotlight. Why step into it now? But after thoughtful conversations, they agreed not to become celebrities, but to share their way of life with a world that had all but forgotten it. What followed was a quiet revolution. Viewers were captivated by Tom's deep knowledge of wilderness trapping, by Nancy's calm resilience and traditional skills, and by the genuine love and teamwork that guided their every move. They weren't just characters on a show. They were the real deal. And suddenly, America couldn't get enough of them. They didn't rehearse lines. They didn't play roles. They just lived. Tom taught the world how to make buckskin shirts. Nancy shared the beauty of living with less. The Oars were never in it for fame, and that's exactly why fans loved them. While the rest of the world scrolled through screens, the Oars built a life worth watching. At the Willow Bend Trading Post in Troy, Montana, they sold handcrafted moccasins, leather goods, and memories stitched into buckskin. Nancy's quiet wisdom, resilience, and grace made her the unsung hero of the show. People wrote to them, asked for advice, wanted to learn how to live like them. But behind the stoic smiles and handcrafted boots was pain. Tom was nearly 70, still chopping wood, still climbing icy rooftops to clear snow. Montana winters are merciless, and one day, they turned on him. He slipped, fell hard. The ground didn't care how legendary he was. Tom lay broken, aching, and in agony. Nancy rushed to his side, heart pounding, terrified. What if she hadn't been there? What if he'd fallen deeper into the snow, or onto ice alone? The fall was a cruel reminder. Even mountain men have limits. Even legends must yield to time. Recovery was slow, painful, emotional. For a man like Tom, or who had spent his life wrangling broncos, setting traps, and surviving blizzards with little more than instinct and grit, being vulnerable was foreign and frightening. Age had crept in quietly at first, a little less energy, a longer recovery from injuries. But this time was different. The injuries lingered. The healing was slow. The man who once thrived on danger now had to learn limits. And Nancy? She became his everything. His nurse, his anchor, his protector. She carried the weight he no longer could, physically and emotionally. She managed the land, the animals, the house, and most importantly, she managed hope. All while watching the man she loved face the unthinkable truth. Their way of life might no longer be sustainable. And that's when the hardest decision of all came. They had to leave. Leaving Montana wasn't just moving, it was mourning. Their cabin wasn't just a home. It was a story, hand-built in pine and sweat. Every window framed a memory. Every log in the walls held echoes of laughter, storms, and long winter nights by the fire. The forest trails weren't just paths. They were old friends. The mountain didn't just test them, it shaped them. The decision to walk away wasn't made lightly. Tom and Nancy had built their life from nothing, defying modern conveniences and living on their own terms for over 30 years. But reality has its own timeline. The harsh winters were taking a greater toll, the physical demands becoming heavier, the risks more dangerous than ever. So, with hearts heavy and hands still calloused from years of work, they packed their things. Not just clothes or tools, but their life. Nancy folded worn flannel shirts that had seen 1,000 snowstorms. Tom rolled up hides he'd tanned with traditional methods. They weren't just packing a house. They were closing a chapter written in firewood, frostbite, and freedom. They said goodbye not just to a home, but to a way of life. a life lived on the edge of the wild, full of risk and reward. And though they moved forward, a piece of their spirit will always remain in that Montana wilderness, where silence reigned, snow whispered secrets, and every sunset reminded them they had truly lived. Tom stood on the porch he'd built with his own 2 hands, touching the wood one last time. Nancy shut the door behind her softly, reverently. Their old truck groaned under the weight of a life lived hard and full. The mountains disappeared in the rearview mirror, but the scent of wood smoke, the sting of winter wind, the echo of elk in the morning, those things stayed. Their destination? Florida. Not for the sunshine or the palm trees, but for the one thing stronger than wild country: family. Now they could attend birthday parties, hear their grandchildren laugh, sit at a dinner table without worrying about the next snowstorm. It was the hardest thing they ever did, but they did it together. In 2022, the Oars faced another mountain, one they couldn't outrun. Tom, now 80, was diagnosed with a serious heart condition. Fluid in the lungs, weakening muscles, a defibrillator vest, and daily medication. A life hanging in the balance. For a man who had battled bears and rivers, this was the most terrifying foe yet. But Nancy never wavered. She cooked, cleaned, lifted, monitored, encouraged. She became his caregiver, his nurse, his strength. Every time his chest ached, her heart broke. And through it all, she never stopped. Then came another heartbreak, one no parent should ever know. In 2015, Tom's daughter, Keely Oar, passed away in St. Petersburg, Florida, at just 49. Keely, who appeared on Mountain Men, was family to Nancy, too. Her loss left a gaping wound in their hearts. But once again, Nancy held Tom together, through grief, through sorrow, through silence. When others might have collapsed under the weight of so many years of change, loss, and physical strain, Nancy did what she's always done. She endured. She didn't cry out for attention or sympathy. She didn't make a spectacle. She simply carried the burden, calmly, gracefully, and without complaint. She was the steady flame that refused to flicker, even in the fiercest storm. When Tom struggled, she supported. When the camera crews left and the fans stopped calling, Nancy remained his partner in every sense. In the quiet corners of their new home in Florida, she became the keeper of their shared history, a life measured not in money or fame, but in resilience, survival, and love. Today, Tom and Nancy Oar no longer appear on Mountain Men. They've stepped out of the limelight, away from the grueling pace of filming, and into the softer rhythm of retirement. But make no mistake, they haven't disappeared. Tom, now well into his 70s, still crafts beautiful handmade leather goods. His fingers, once calloused from traps and reins, now shape rawhide into wallets, moccasins, and sheaths with the same care and precision that made him a legend. Every stitch tells a story. Every piece is a relic of a fading art form, one Tom refuses to let vanish. And Nancy, she's still creating, still giving, still as quietly powerful as ever. Whether she's cooking from scratch, tending to her garden, or helping manage their growing number of fan letters, Nancy remains the heart of everything they do. To those who meet her, she radiates the same quiet strength that made her such a force on the frontier, calm, loving, and unshakably grounded. Together, they now live a simpler life, not so different from the one they left behind, just gentler on the body. No longer battling snowstorms, but still connected to nature, still finding joy in the small, meaningful things. They may no longer be on television every week, but in the hearts of millions, Tom and Nancy Oar are still very much mountain royalty. Not because they chased fame, but because they lived honestly and loved fearlessly. They attend events, share interviews, occasionally update fans. But mostly, they just live, because that's what they've always done. Their story is a blueprint for a life of purpose. A life of simplicity, resilience, and unshakable love. Nancy Oar isn't just a mountain man's wife. She is a mother, an artist, a philanthropist, a survivor, a silent warrior who weathered every storm with grace. And in the end, isn't that the real adventure? Nancy and Tom Oar built a life most would call impossible. But to them, it was just real. They gave up comfort for authenticity, fame for freedom, noise for peace. Their story isn't just one of survival. It's one of knowing when to hold on and when to let go. So if you're ever wondering what it means to live a meaningful life, think of Nancy, sewing by candlelight, helping Tom walk again, saying goodbye to the only home she knew. That is courage. If you've been inspired by Nancy and Tom's story, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is live life on your own terms. Like, subscribe and hit that bell. And before you go, click the video on your screen for another unbelievable true life journey.